Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network joining us now. How you doing, Tommy?
Do I get chicken fingers for sitting in the chair?
Everyone keeps asking that.
Seriously. We're going to have to actually get them now.
I guess they're coming on Friday.
You can be sponsored by anything. If you're sponsored by a credit union, I'm not going to be like, do I get a credit card? But chicken fingers,
you should
have a supply.
Do I get a loan out of this?
Right, exactly. Do I get a half a point? Anything? Can you help me on my mortgage?
I like a good guy whose name ends in a vowel.
So you enjoying your week already?
It's been great so far. I was telling you guys off air, having the Super Bowl in New Orleans. I mean, it's the most walkable city possible. The food is just incredible. The media night last night, I mean, that's the biggest one. It's the first time it's been back, I think, in the football stadium since like 2012. It's been a long time. That was when they went to, the arena to kind of pack it in. Obviously, they had the field off limits, so everything still felt like it was packed in around the outsides. But everything just feels bigger here, and it should be a fun week ahead. Okay, let's get into some of your reporting that we followed closely because we're very interested still in Bill Belichick and his career arc and the opportunities. We're upset he's not in the league. Just more interesting for us if he's still. I think for everybody. If he's still in the league, and it's still a big storyline in New England. And there was some reporting from you a couple weeks ago that he hadn't quite signed the contract. And he had talked to Brady in Vegas, and, that door was still kind of open. Do you think it was open, and is it now? I mean, there's only one job left, so I guess it would have to be closed. It's closed by process of elimination at this point. But at that time, Bill Belichick answered the phone when Tom Brady's calling him. And obviously they still have a relationship. There was a lot going on, but those two are guys who really respect each other. Tom called him, and from what I was told, it was basically, as part of a broader conversation, it was like, what would it take? Like, what would it take if we were going to hire you to Vegas? Like, what would that look like? And Bill at least was willing to have that conversation. I know for a fact that there were multiple other owners that he talked to at various points. Bill took the North Carolina job because he wanted to coach, because he didn't want to be out for another year. And that was a deal that was set up by his friend and longtime confidant, Michael Lombardi. He kind of put it together. There were some boosters that knew Bill at North Carolina. They set this thing up. They made a compelling case to him. He wanted to get back on the sideline. And at that time, he didn't want to end up with no job. Because the year before, as you guys well remember, only one team interviewed him. There were like 7 or 8 teams with openings. One team interviewed him. It was the Falcons. Initially, Bill Belichick and Arthur Blank met on Blank's yacht. And they had a long conversation. And I think that, I believe that was probably how Bill thought this should just kind of go. I'm the greatest coach of all time. I've got all these Super Bowl rings. You and me on the yacht, we talk about it. We like each other. Let's go.
Done.
The thing is, with the NFL, with the way that the process is set up, you're supposed to put everybody through the same interview process. Now, we can talk about some of the cases in which that didn't entirely happen this year, but you're supposed to go through a process. And so the Falcons told him, hey, we need you to come in. We need you to go through the car wash and meet with all the different department heads and come in. And so Bill Belichick was one of a dozen candidates who all came in and did the same interview process. And then up until the day that they hired Raheem Morris, literally the day they hired Raheem, Bill was still operating as if he was getting that job. He was still lining up staff. He was still having conversations. And then for them to tell him, we're going another direction. You can imagine, if you're at the absolute top of your profession, only one team who wants to talk to you, and then they say, hey, we're going with this other guy. I believe, based on what I know, that hit Bill hard, not because of being insulted by it necessarily, but more like just what kind of screwy process is this? And you've heard Lombardi make references to that about how messed up the NFL is and all that. But I don't believe that Bill's never going back, and we don't want that. North Carolina's perfect. I don't necessarily believe.
Do you think if he had waited, he would have had a job this cycle? That's
what I was going to get to. I don't think that's how Bill feels at all. Bill always told players, right? Speak for yourself. You could go up to name a player, Gerard Mayo in the locker room when he was a player, and say, hey, how about Wes Welker? And Gerard would go, I would just say for myself, I really like where this football team's going, okay? We haven't heard from Bill. Bill has never said, I never want to go back to the NFL. The NFL's a joke. He's made comments about things that are messed up, and there's some validity to things process-wise. But I do wonder, especially when the Raiders hire 73-year-old Pete Carroll, who's older than Bill, when they hire him, that was one of my first reactions was, I wonder if Bill never takes that North Carolina job if he's the head coach of the Raiders right now. Just because it put him a little bit out of sight, out of mind for NFL owners, and they didn't feel like, hey, Bill's out there, we at least should talk to him. I believe he would have had opportunities to interview. Would he have gotten a job, though? I don't know. And that's precisely why he took the bird in hand at the time he did.
What do you think the biggest obstacle for him was?
to going back to the NFL?
Yep.
It was, not knowing whether or not he was going to get a job. That was the number one thing.
No, I don't mean for him.
Why teams
Why teams weren't getting
Correct.
involved. I think that, age is a part of it. And again, we just saw a guy who's older than him, roughly the same age, take the Raiders job. But I think that it's, with Bill, you're not necessarily looking at it as a long-term type of solution. You're not looking at this as, hey, we're going to build this thing for 5-10 years. And if you know Bill and how he built the program in Cleveland, but also, more importantly in New England, you know that there was a process. They won the Super Bowl, pretty quickly in New England. But also, Bill is very much we're going to instill the culture first. We're going to get this thing right. And you don't necessarily have time to go through that process with a 72-year-old coach. For Bill, it had to be, if he was going to come back to the NFL, I don't believe that he would have taken just any job. It would have had to be a place where you've got a quarterback or the opportunity to get one. You've got to have enough of a talent base that you feel like you can win in the short term. You got to have an owner who is not hyper involved and going to be a pain in your ass every day. And, there were probably some geographic things too. Like, I don't even know, would Bill, if it came right down to it, would he have moved to Las Vegas? My instinct is he would have been very intrigued to go to, he's always had respect for Al Davis, to go out there and coach an iconic franchise. I think he would have had to think hard about it. But, was he going to go, to the West Coast? I don't know, based on family considerations and other things here. They never got to that point. But I think that there was last year in particular, there was this big move away from negative reinforcement coaching and culture.
So this is what I was getting at, is why did Atlanta back out?
There were
if it's backing out.
There were a lot. Yeah, there were a lot of factors there. They had Raheem Morris in the building, and Raheem Morris is a guy who was well liked in that building, and they ultimately really wanted him. But I think that in a more broad sense, not just Bill was out last year. All the people who were ever with Bill were out last year. Joe Judge didn't have a job. Obviously, Matt Patricia got caught up in that thing and had to call somebody else's defense, and I don't blame that thing on Matt last year. He was in a really tough spot. But Vrabel wasn't in. And Vrabel, not that he's a negative guy, but he's still from that mold of it's negative reinforcement culture. Hey, if you're doing this wrong, we're going to call this out. I'm going to be hard on people. Look at the coaches who were hired last year. It was the positive reinforcement culture guys. And I think that grew out of D'Amico Ryans coming in and having instant success. And it felt like, hey, we're all a part of this. The owners, the front office, the kids of the owners, the players, everybody's a stakeholder here. Dan Campbell, same thing in Detroit. We're bringing this whole thing together, and we're going to bring energy. Dan can be hard on people, but we're all moving the same direction. I think that with Bill and even with Vrabes, it's, listen, they come from kind of this football god archetype, which is very common in college football, not as common in the NFL, but it's very much, hey, I'm running the football. I'm the one in charge here. And yes, you get to enjoy the fruits of whatever we produce here, but football goes through me. And I that just wasn't in vogue. And now if Mike comes back to New England and turns that thing around, and everyone will be like, oh yeah, one of the best coaches in the NFL is back and having success. Who cares how much he, curses out the players when they screw something up? These things shouldn't matter, but everything is cyclical.
Tom Pelissero, NFL Network, join us here on Radio Row on the Patriots. How far away do you think they are? Do you think it's a couple moves and bing, bang, boom, they're there, or they got a long way to go?
They got the most important piece, which is Drake May looks like he's legit. And under really tough circumstances last year, he played really well. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. You can look at, I don't know if the offensive line is as far away as people think. Or as I see people saying. But the receiver core, you got a bunch of dudes who are all they're serviceable NFL players, but there's not a one, and there's probably not even a number two on the team. Jalen Polk, who was supposed to be an impact player for him, nobody knows exactly what happened there, but it just, whether it's mentally or whatever, it got away from him. You'd hope, reset, come back, and you play better. But they have to add a receiver. They have to add on the offensive line. Defensively, there's a lot of parts they need. So, yeah, there's a lot that they have to do. But they have the resources to do it in terms of, obviously, a high draft pick, not as high as it could have been pending Week 18. They got a ton of cap space. If they're willing to spend cash, you should be able to microwave this a little bit here because you've got really good coaches. And I do believe we're able to put together a really good staff. People may not know. Obviously, Josh is a known commodity there, but Terrell Williams, I remember Dan Campbell telling me last year, he was so excited they got Terrell Williams just because of the energy and the what he brought to the table. That's a really good hire. Even bringing in guys like Todd Downing, who he had been with in Tennessee. Todd's called plays at multiple places. I mean, he's a good football coach. To get a guy like that coaching your receivers, there's a lot of those types of hires. He's got a lot of smart people in the building. I fully believe that they're gonna be a lot more competitive this year. Are they going to go and win the AFC East? That might be asking a lot in 2025, but hopefully right direction.
Any other Patriots nuggets before we let you go? A little inside, a little something?
I would just say I would anticipate that they are very active, and I know that Elliott Wolf was working it on every receiver. It didn't work out last year, but whether it was Calvin Ridley or Brandon Ayuk or other guys that came up, they were in on everything. Listen, it's hard when you're bad, and people didn't know if the quarterback was going to be any good. The good news this year is you're still bad, but people now know this quarterback is good. Are the Patriots going to have to overpay in free agency? Probably. That's just the nature of it. But you're going to have a much better selling point that, hey, we're going to pay you a little extra, and you get to play with this dude who, if we could just make this thing competent, has a chance to be really, really good.
Okay. Tom
He had
Pelissero.
a little twinkle in his eye when he said, I would anticipate they're going to be in on everything.
We'll take that and run with it. And when we're done with it, you'll be sorry you ever said it. You'll be sorry you ever said it.
All you need.
You can see Tom on NFL Network's The Insiders every night at 7 o'clock and during more than 60 hours of live Super Bowl week coverage on NFL Network and NFL Plus. You're also doing Game Day Morning. How many hours is that, like a 14-hour extravaganza?
8.5, somebody said to me earlier.
Oh
Nobody tells me the
gosh.
times. They just tell me what time the car is showing up, and I got to be dressed in it.
8.5-hour pregame
8 a.m.,
show?
I think we're on at Central Time, if
Holy
I'm not
crap.
mistaken.
Tom, thanks for coming by. We appreciate
You got it.
If you like that clip, check out more videos from Felger and Mazz here. For more Patriots analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. And for all the latest from the Sports Hub, download the app at 985thesportshub.com.